MCP, Model Context Protocol, right now is all the rage. And you've probably seen a bunch of content popping up everywhere about it. But in this video, I want to do something different. Years ago, when I used to teach a coding boot camp, I always told my students how to research is just as important as knowing how to code. There's an art to it, knowing where to look, what to look for, and how to filter out what's not worth your time. So in the spirit of that, this video is a curated guide. I'm going to show you well-made videos that introduce you to MCP, explain what each of them covers and why I chose them, and then pair them with the most helpful documentation. So my goal is to give you a one-stop reference for learning MCP, so you don't have to go digging around for hours looking for which video is actually good, which one's like a waste of time, and same thing for like the documentation. All right, so let's go ahead and just kick it off with the first one. If you enjoy learning by building from scratch, then this video is for you. The Future of AI in VS Code, MCP Servers Explained by Burke, Holland. Now, why did I choose this video? The narrative technique is simple and unfiltered, meaning that it's straight talk explaining concepts as if it's over lunch. And if there's anything that goes wrong throughout the video, he addresses the issue and fixes the problem right there in front of you, unedited. He also kicks off the video by explaining the problem first that's going to be solved. The coding technique, building a game with Copilot's agent mode, and MCP. So now let's go over the content flow of how Burke implements his narrative and coding technique for this learning experience for MCP. Now, right off the bat, after his intro, he shows how to set up MCP in VS Code. But after that, before even explaining what MCP is, he starts off by stating what the problem is that MCP solves. And he does this by generating a visual diagram to show the problem and how VS Code interacts with MCP to communicate with a database. As an example, around the 3-minute mark, he begins to demo MCP by creating a game, which he uses Copilot's agent mode to show how to use an MCP server to add more tools to VS Code that could be used. At this point, he explains where you can find more servers, like at mcp.so, where he'll ultimately choose, in this example, Perplexity, which he explains is essentially a search engine and describes how it's going to be used within the game. At the 7th-minute mark, he begins to create a game, which essentially is you being a fly that must navigate using the cursor keys to pass obstacles in order to win. And all this is done using Copilot's voice commands. The last thing that I want to mention that's great in this video is how he shows hurdles he encounters and fixes them in real time. This is an unfiltered approach, which makes for a great learning experience because it shows the issues that you are likely to encounter. So it's not edited out. You see it happen and you see it getting addressed. And this brings us towards the end at the 12-minute mark, where he wraps up showing how the fly game works. When learning a new concept like MCP, sometimes it's good to see various examples in one video to solidify your understanding. And if you're a fan of that, then you'll enjoy this VS Code plus MCP Getting Started video by James Montemagno. Now, why did I choose this video? Well, for its narrative technique, it follows a detailed step-by-step approach, whether he's covering enabling MCP in VS Code, configuring MCP servers, and his various code examples, which leads me into the coding technique, which is to start off with a very simple example, and in his case, a time conversion using MCP, and then using MCP to leverage functionalities in GitHub such as getting, creating, and updating GitHub issues. This video also has the source codes available so you can work along with James, in addition to other links to resources in the video description. Now let's turn our attention by covering the content of his video. James starts off by explaining what MCP is at a very high level, and the style in which he answers the question of what MCP is exactly how you'd want to answer it in an interview that shows that you actually understand it and not regurgitating a textbook definition. He then moves on to an overview of the model context protocol and servers on GitHub to set the stage before he moves into giving a step-by-step process of how to enable MCP. Next, he brings us into opening up settings.json to configure MCP servers in VS Code. And after that, we then move into the actual examples. And the first is just a very simple time conversion MCP server using a Docker configuration. The other good thing that I want to point out is that he doesn't cut corners, but points out some small details, such as if you want to choose a session versus a workspace or always during this process. Now, once James is done with the simple example, he moves into a real-world, more sophisticated example to work with GitHub. So to prep you for this, he has a nice little overview of the GitHub MCP server, and then moves on to choosing a configuration such as Node to set up MCP with the personal access token, but also mentions how for best practices you can consider using input variables. So in the context of GitHub, the examples that he covers includes searching an issue, some commands using a pull request, and then demos creating and updating issues. And last but not least, he implements a feature based on the knowledge he's been giving it in order to be able to demonstrate agent mode and MCP workflow together. If you like learning from content where the code is already set up and explained, Matt Soucoup's Introduction to MCP is for you. Why did I choose this video? Well, for the narrative technique, he uses his pre-demo code review approach, meaning that nothing is done to the code without him explaining the code to you first. Now, there is some Azure function knowledge that's useful to have prior to looking at this video, but you can learn about it here. As for his coding technique, he uses a combo tech demo where he's using MCP and Azure function together in the demonstration. So you're not just learning about MCP, but also how to use it with a separate technology like Azure Functions. And last but not least, you save a lot of time because of the fact that the code already exists that you're going to be manipulating, and he includes some nice resources in the video description. Now let's go over the flow of his video. Matt first starts out explaining what MCP is in the context of using it with Azure Functions. And then he goes ahead and shows you the code that you could use to download to follow along. Now, close to the 4-minute mark, he then tells you the packages that you'll need, which is great because sometimes code could be provided, but then you still need to set up and update packages, and he doesn't ignore that. And then he moves on to review the code so you know exactly what you're working with. After that, he moves on to explaining how you could use the azd up command to spin up the Azure resources that are going to be needed to use in conjunction with the MCP tool triggers. After that, he moves on to demonstrating how to add and configure the MCP server, and then actually implementing using a couple of Azure functions such as the get snippet and hello functions. So in all, this is a great video to just get things set up and save a lot of time so that you can get straight to the demo and focus your learning on how to use MCP server with an Azure function in your journey to solidify your understanding of how MCP works. Now, before wrapping up, I do want to include some resources that will now make a lot more sense having gone through the videos that I've just shown you. And the first one is on Visual Studio Code's website itself, our blog section that you could look at here for an introduction to what MCP is and some examples. Then on GitHub, we have some more content here on MCP that you could review, particularly if you want to focus on some examples relative to either TypeScript, Python, Java, etc. We also have the official model context protocol.io website that you can review. And while I don't personally think this is the friendliest explanation, it should make much more sense after reviewing our videos. And there's also this blog here on building AI agents tools using Remote MCP with Azure Functions, which should also make more sense now that you've experimented with one of our videos that covers Azure Functions. And last but not least, this website, which was referenced earlier with some MCP servers that you could experiment with.
How can you bring Perplexity right into your coding flow? By using agent mode in VS Code with the Perplexity MCP server. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol and is an open protocol that standardizes how applications provide context to models. And remember, better context equals better answers. In VS Code, MCP support enhances agent mode by allowing you to connect any MCP server and use the tools it provides in agent mode. MCP server configuration happens in the mcp.json file located in the VS Code folder. I already have a Perplexity server configured here, but to add a new server, I could click the Add Server button directly in the JSON file, where you can then select a type and it will add a template for your new server. Now, if we look at this Perplexity server configuration, you will see that we have general properties for setting the command and arguments, but then you will also see a property for an input variable for our API key. Input variables let the user input sensitive information so you can avoid hard coding it. And then we can reference that input in the Perplexity API key property. When I go to start the server for the first time, inputs are prompted, then stored securely by VS Code, so this is a really great feature that allows you to keep your secrets safe. And we can run the MCP list servers command to see the list of servers I have and start or stop them. Now, if we look at our tools available in agent mode, we see the Perplexity Ask, Research, and Reason tools from our Perplexity MCP server. I have this web page running and it's all about MCP. So let's add a page about the top MCP servers. If I prompt research with Perplexity what the best MCP servers for front-end development are and create a splashy listing page, it will automatically invoke the Perplexity research tool. When I continue with this tool, we have the power of Perplexity at our fingertips. This will take a few moments, so I did make some quick editing cuts here so we can skip ahead. Once the tool call is finished, you can see the output from it, so we can see the full response that Perplexity returned. Then, Copilot will take that result and edit our code to implement our new page, all without us having to leave our agentic coding flow.
Let me go over into my browser and you're like, well, let's set up some stuff. So if you go over here, like today, to the Model Context Protocol organization, there is like a huge list of servers. Like there's those reference servers, there's a bunch of third-party servers, and there's like a bajillion websites to find servers. You know what I mean? So there's tons of them. So for example, one of the classic time and tested MCP servers is this time one. It has two tools. So you're going to see this tool concept, tools. Just get that in your mind, the tools, right? So getting time, converting time, and then installation. So tools and servers, they can be a bunch of different things. They could be extensions, MCP servers, can be installed running, like in this case with Python, or for example in Docker. And here we can see this is the MCP time Docker there.
Huge.
Right, so you can kind of do that. So let's set that up. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm just going to close all the windows. We don't need to see them. And let's drop that down. I'm going to hit tools, and then you can say more tools, and then you can say add MCP server. Now, if we add this here, this is going to add it globally for like all of my projects, which I think is fine. But what I like to do is add it into my repo specifically. So what I've done is created my VS Code folder, and I have an mcp.json. And when you do that, you can hit add server. And this is going to bring up that same menu, but it's going to basically configure what MCP servers I want on this project. Some you might want global, and you can do that, but some you might just want for your project. So I'm going to say Docker image. I'm going to paste that in, MCP time, hit enter. And then it's going to ask me, are you allowed to install it? So permission there. I'm going to say yes, give it an ID of time. And just like that, it's configured and we're ready to go. We can see that there's a little new tool available. I can hit restart there. It's going to download the Docker image for you. It's going to start it up. I already have it here to save time, and it'll be good to go. So it does all that stuff for you. So like, it's really just like a JSON configuration that it's doing. So nothing crazy special.
Well, and when it's in that folder, that means you can check it into your repo. So if anybody else is working on it, they can. And so when you say that you're pulling it from Docker, is this where you need to have Docker installed to be able to have this here?
That's correct. Yeah, Docker in this case, or other commands. If you're running Podman, for example, that should work just fine. So it's just a command that it's going to run, and we'll see different use cases for that too. So now I can come over here, and if I just hit this little tool, I can see that there's get current time and convert time, but I can also use the pound here. That actually brings up all the tools and all the other things. So this is fun. Fetch is my new favorite tool. But we can see get current time is there as well. And then there's the convert time. So they just show up as commands. So I could say, what time is it in Japan right now? ? Now, in this case, GitHub Copilot is figuring out what it needs to do. So it's parsed that. Like, I didn't tell it to go use the tool. It's just figured it out. It's like, based on the descriptions, it's like, I got you. And in this case, it's going to say, okay, I know what time it is. I'm going to get the current time for Tokyo. And you give it permission to run that command, okay? You can do it one-off. You can allow for the session, for the workspace, or always. I'm going to be in control all the time. That's just me. But it is currently tomorrow at 2:32 a.m. Then I could say, can you pound convert time to Eastern time? Whatever, I don't know. So we'll figure it out, right? So now it's going to run convert time. It's going to take that up there, and then it's going to pipe it down into here, right? So it's going to work. It's going to call into that. Now we can see, the Eastern time corresponding to 2:32 a.m. in Tokyo is actually 1:32 p.m. today in New York, which is pretty cool.
Hey everyone, what's up? My name's Liam Hampton. I'm a senior cloud advocate on the Visual Studio Code developer tools team here at Microsoft. And today we're going to be talking all about MCP servers. But first, we have got a great update that has just dropped in VS Code. We now have the full spec support for MCP servers. What does that mean? Well, that's full support for prompts, resources, and sampling. You got one-click debug mode for server-side development, so much more, including authentication or a new authentication model for MCP servers too. Oh my goodness, so much going on in such a short amount of time. So, what is an MCP server? Well, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and it is a really good way to extend and give LLMs more context using external tooling and toolchain calls. I think it's a really awesome way to add a little bit more context, and it's more of a plug and play for you. There's thousands of these MCP servers available to you, and in this demo today, or in this video rather, I'm going to show you how I am personally using these in my daily development with a really good example using the GitHub MCP server and Perplexity MCP server in Visual Studio Code. Let me not talk about it, let me just show you. Let's hop into VS Code. Okay, so here I am over in Visual Studio Code. Now, I've got this repository of my personal portfolio website, and the website itself is okay, it's pretty good, and I'm happy with that. But if somebody wanted to replicate my website, and they went to my README, they would see, well, not a lot. They would just see a link. Now, that's not good. Now, what I've done on the repository is opened up an issue. This issue number 5 is just stating, hey, look, it's great, but we need a README. We need to give a little bit more context to this repository, because that's what you would expect on a GitHub repo. If I go back over to here, you can just see there's just a link. What I've done is I've installed the GitHub MCP server. How did I do that? Well, there's two ways you can do it. You can either go to the repository on GitHub and click the blue button for VS Code and install it, or you can do it the manual way. I chose the manual way. Now, all I have to do is press Command Shift and P to get the command palette and open up my user settings JSON file. What that'll do is open up this file. In here, I've got my MCP JSON block, and inside there, I've got servers. As you can see, I've got a couple of servers in here. I've got my Azure MCP server, Perplexity, GitHub, and Playwright. You can also see that there are some tokens. Now, these are stored safely inside VS Code, but as you can see, some of these are running and some of these are not. How do I know if they're installed or not? Well, I can open up my command palette and type in MCP and list servers. Here you can see all the servers I've got which are running and ones that are stopped. This is where you can see them inside VS Code. You could also open up Copilot and click on the spanner and screwdriver button on the chat window. This will also bring up everything that I've got installed and ones that I've got selected and not selected. What are we going to be doing in the demo today, and how are we going to be using MCP servers? So let's go back to our README. What are we trying to do? Well, we want Copilot to build us a README using agent mode, but it needs a little bit more context. We want it to go ahead and call the GitHub MCP server, and we want it to pull in the issue. Now we've given it context, it's got the server ready. All I'm going to do is say, hey Copilot, let's work on issue 5. Now what Copilot is going to do is it's going to go off and call the MCP server. And as you can see, it has completed. It has called the API using the server, it has pulled back the issue, and it's given itself a little bit more context. Now, as you can also see, it's prompted me, and there is still a human in the loop, which is super important. This is a really good way to maintain control over what is going on with these agents. So I'm going to click continue, because this is now wanting to run a ask to Perplexity. Now it's going to ask Perplexity, what are the best practices? So the best practices for writing professional and effective README for a GitHub project. It has pulled the context from the previous MCP toolchain run, and it's going to take that and put it into this next ask. So I'm going to click continue. So this is a third-party and a first-party MCP server calling. Now this is a toolchain which you can see happening, and it's got context throughout the entire run. So once that has completed, it should hopefully now give me a README. So we're in agent mode, we're using GPT 4.1, and it's hopefully going to go off and start creating this README for me. Here we are. Agent mode is working its magic. Fantastic. Now let's see what it looks like. I'm going to open up the preview. So let's open up the preview README. Wow, that looks so much better than what I had before. It's giving me a project overview. It's given the motivation, a quick start. So if anybody wants to get hold of this, they can go ahead and clone the repository and start working with it. It's given a project structure and a roadmap. Who knows, there may be some more known issues. This is fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this. That is how I'm using MCP servers in my daily development to maintain and create these wonderful applications. It's more of a plug and play. I could have other MCP servers call other APIs and get more information about this. Okay, so there we have it. That is how I'm using MCP servers in my daily development to extend Copilot and add a little bit more context to the LLMs. So in a recap, what is MCP? MCP is an open standard that facilitates communication between AI agents, services, tools, and data sources.
So I hope that this video helped you cut through the noise and give you a solid foundation to start learning MCP the right way. Remember, learning isn't just about watching the most hyped content, it's about choosing the right sources for the right reasons. If you found this helpful, feel free to drop a like, leave a comment on which video you liked or found the most helpful. And of course, if you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming up next. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.